Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another fantastic Geek Vibes Live interview. I'm your host, Tia, and I have with me the amazing Jens Meuer. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How is New York?
It's
I wish I
actually,
could be there in person. That's the truth.
it would be lovely to actually conduct interviews in person. New York is very sunny right now. Thankfully, we're getting into warmer weather.
Okay.
Is it warm, cold in Berlin? Oh.
It's miserable.
Oh man, oh man. So I apologize about that. You gotta come to New York at some point, especially since the summer is coming. You can actually enjoy the beautiful weather.
No. I can't wait to go back to the Corner Bistro. That's my place.
Where is
Greenwich
that?
Village. It's in Greenwich Village. Just
Yeah,
Fifth
Greenwich Village
Avenue.
is so nice.
Yeah.
I can imagine that you go a lot of places, doing documentaries and such, and you're actually here to speak about your documentary, An Impossible Project, which I love the subject of it, by the way, just following a man who his mission is to save Polaroids, essentially. What was it about that story that really drew you in?
Well, what really caught my attention wasn't so much the technology of Polaroid per se, which is great, and I kind of grew up with it. But what I really liked was this mindset of somebody kind of going the other way when we're all beginning to be completely engulfed by this digital world and everyone was going crazy, queuing for a phone. I mean, how crazy is that? And here's my guy who's larger than life, who already 15 years ago had this thing of, hey, slow down. Maybe you are you still there? Yeah, maybe we still need this analog stuff, this old stuff in the future. And so this degree of positive resistance, that caught my imagination. I thought, and he's doing it with a sense of humor. He's doing it with a sense of warmth that we're losing in this ever more digital social media world. And so that's really what I bought into when I started making this film.
I think it's really interesting because, as you said, we all take pictures and videos on our phones. I mean, I grew up with my grandpa having the big video camera at every single holiday, and now it's all in the palm of your hand. But I feel as if Polaroids kind of did make a little bit of a comeback. I have a modern Polaroid camera, a few of my family members do. Is that something that you use now too, especially after making the documentary?
Yes, of course. And I mean, it's a total miracle. Back in 2008, which was the year when the iPhone first appeared, Polaroid sort of had given themselves up for dead. And there's one guy from Austria who's nothing to do with photography. He's like this crazy biologist specializing in spider eye muscles, has this calling. I got to save this American icon, Polaroid. And fast forward to 2021, it actually worked. And Polaroid is back. And it's especially young people who are buying this stuff and using it. So for them, it's not nostalgia. It's like a modern product. And I'm not so young, but I definitely use it as well. As I'm using typewriter again, and like everyone, vinyl. There's so many things that somehow add joy and value to your life. And I'm definitely, I don't think it's nostalgia. I think it's actually forward looking.
I believe so as well. There's just something that's really nice about analog. I still have VHS tapes, and I know that people younger than me probably have never even held one before. So it is a very interesting journey into, seeing analog becoming more popular as we go on. How was it, by the way, working with Doc? You said that he's larger than life.
Well, I tell you what, it's probably easier following him as a filmmaker than actually working with him or being married to him, God forbid. Um, Working with him as a filmmaker, it was pretty inspirational because, here's somebody, he's dogged. He will not let go of an idea if he believes it's right. And his ideas are positive. This is a kind of a inspirational, positive film. And so it's often unpredictable and crazy following him around. In fact, I just did it last weekend because at the end of my film, he discovers this shining like hotel near Vienna that has stood empty but completely up and running for 40 years. And he's now found people who are going to buy it with him, and they're going to renovate it and get it going again. And that's like 4 years of persuading people to continue that particular impossible story. So put it that way, it's never boring.
When people think of documentaries, a lot of them are over serious subjects and, can deal with a lot of the sort of not so nice things in the world. I mean, was it nice to make a documentary about something that is uplifting and something that could bring joy to those who are watching it?
Well, I hope it does that, but I'd say that's a very serious documentary. And I really do mean that seriously. I think if you look at politics in your country or mine, and how social media, the sort of digital deluge that has taken over most of our lives, how it has caused division and hate speech, fakeness, coldness between people. So in a way, my story and Doc's story, I think, has a real serious and political aspect to it, because it's an antidote. It's an example of what would happen if we were actually together more. What would happen if we thought a little bit more how we communicate with one another? Imagine we were actually writing letters that are physical and not just, comments or likes or unlikes or whatever on Facebook. And, in that sense, of course, I want my film is uplifting, but I think that's the serious message in it, which is, I almost think, I'm sure you know the social dilemma, which really spells it out, what issues we're facing here. I see it as a companion piece. It's also a way out of this. And it's really simple. It's just slow down a little bit and use all 5 of your senses, feel that there's a person opposite you, not just somebody that you hate on social media. So I know it sounds crazy because my film has a sense of humor and it's filmed beautifully, and it has this unusual soundtrack that was actually recorded for the film. But I believe that is the political message.
I can definitely understand that. I mean, it's almost as if it's a remedy to how impersonal things have become, especially with the introduction of these social media websites.
Yeah, I think remedy is a really good word. I'm going to use it from now on. It is an invitation to remedy. It's kind of an invitation to fall in love again with real things. And it sounds stupid, who cares, a Polaroid picture or a book? But actually, I think they're the essence of a healthy human existence, and dare I say, within a democracy where you have time to listen to one another, where you practice this. So, look, I'm not going to stand on a soapbox here, but I think your term remedy is a really good one.
Oh, and I was going to say, for books, I like always a physical book, whereas I feel at some point the push for, say, the Kindles and Nooks were really there, but I feel as if people really like the feeling things, and that's where it also goes with the Polaroid pictures. You get to print them out and have them in your hand as opposed to just online where it's not tangible.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, that's what a lot of people are experiencing. And, Polaroid versus smartphone pictures, you realize we live in this completely crazy age where we go to museums and archives and we see photographs of our grandparents, of past lives. And we're the generation that has the least that will survive, because it's all stuck on digital media that hardly any of it will survive, certainly in your own life. And the same is true with letters. You know, people have written letters for thousands of years. They're famous collections of letters. There's bloody fuck all in our generation because it's all WhatsApp messages and they're not going to survive. No one will find a love letter WhatsApp message in their attic in a few years. And
No,
how, you know,
absolutely.
how empty and sad is that? And I do think, you know, it's not just sad, and I'm not being nostalgic. I think we're missing an essential ingredient to, you know, a healthy and happy life with one another.
Right, absolutely. You know, going back to the documentary, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I saw something that it's filmed on a 35 millimeter camera. Is that correct of what I read?
Yeah, that's very correct. It's a proper old school film. You know, 35 millimeters is usually a movie, a cinema camera, or used to be, still is. People like Steven Spielberg, Star Wars and so on are shot in that format as well, or even more. And, you know, for me, it was clear that I wouldn't tell the story of this man who sets out to save this physical American iconic Polaroid photography by rescuing the last factory that was still left standing in 2008. I wasn't going to film this on digital or some video format. So I decided to kind of start my own impossible project and see, can you still make a documentary on 35 millimeter, which is how filmmaking started. And so the proof is in the pudding. We will hopefully have screenings in America with our 35 millimeter print, which is only a few years ago that we all saw films that way.
As I watched the trailer, I became a little jealous that I wasn't able to see the documentary yet because it just looked so uplifting. And I agree with you where you said that there is also this deeper message that comes along with it. But it's definitely, at least from what I can see in the trailer, framed very entertaining, especially following around with Doc. How long did it take to film this documentary?
Oh, it took a really long time. It took 7 years. Because
wow.
the story was unfolding. I had to constantly raise a bit more money to keep going. And it kind of started as my night job. So my day job was producing fiction films. And it also took a long time until they actually managed to bring back Polaroid. So it took a while. And then the pandemic hit. So now it's taken even longer to actually hopefully make it in front of people's screens. There will be a digital release in June, but I do really hope that it'll be seen at least in some cinemas in America in the fall.
Movie theaters are opening back up, so we certainly can hope that it seems as if one thing was piled on top of the other. How did you find it being a filmmaker and trying to finish everything that you've done for the past 7 years while in the middle of a global pandemic?
Yeah. Well, if I could choose not to repeat the experience, I would choose that. No, of course, it wasn't much fun to be working. You're suddenly so isolated, and you know, the film has been to quite a few festivals now, but they are virtual. So you can't afterwards stand in front of the screen and answer questions or go for a drink in the foyer. And I'm really, really missing that. And you know, on the one hand, I think the good news is my film is all about physical and coming together again and enjoying that, and an invitation to be conscious of keeping that sort of thing alive in our lives. So it's not kind of becoming less topical, it's becoming more topical, but it's taking a really long time to actually sort of practice what I'm preaching by being able to show the film. You know,
I was going to say it's as you just said, the documentary is about, you know, rebuilding these human and physical connections. And unfortunately, the pandemic has forced people to not be able to practice that. But I feel that, at least myself and from what I can see around me, that people are yearning for now that connection. So in fact, the documentary is, more relevant than ever, I feel.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. And, you know, it does also come at a time when I think many people are kind of reflecting a little bit more on kind of how, it's cliches, how cold their lives have become, but how, how distant people, even within families, have come from one another. I think it is worth looking at the story of not just Doc in my film, but there are other people who, it's not really about analog technologies, it's kind of about analog, a mindset. It's, his saying is trust your senses. You have 5 senses, not just sight and sound that is all ever tickled by digital. You have much more, and I think that's where the film fits right in. And I do think, I hope that many people can relate to that. And by also seeing it's, in my film, you'll meet people who've made a decision to keep these things going or to learn proper photography. It's not just Polaroid. To play music live and not just on electronic or computer instruments. And none of it is really new, and it's never gone away completely. But it's kind of a real question we should each and all of us ask ourselves, how much space for something sensuous, use my senses, do I have in my daily life? And that's kind of the neck of the woods that this film is playing in.
Is there, you have mentioned meeting a lot of people during the filmmaking process. Is there one particular person that you met that really stands out from this documentary?
Well, other than my main guy, one of the strangest and weirdest and most wonderful experiences is that with him, we managed to just walk right into Facebook headquarters, because we were shooting on 35mm and we didn't, we weren't a news crew and we didn't look like a news crew. And Doc had discovered that Facebook had something called the Analog Research Lab, really in the middle of their headquarters in Menlo Park in Silicon Valley, where they do things like hand printing and sewing and so on. And we filmed there just as the shit was hitting the fan around the various scandals. It was very interesting to see. And, of course, like 3 billion other people who use Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram, I don't really know what it looks like inside that company. And, well, in my film, you have a chance to see it, and it's not what you expect.
That's going to be interesting. That's not something that really anyone else has a front row seat to see.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's not what you would expect. So...
you did this project, it's taken 7 years to do. Are there plans of a follow-up or, just exploring something else kind of within the same theme of an impossible project?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I am hoping, and I think it's about to start happening, that there will be a sequel which is based around Doc discovering this gigantic Shining style hotel where the owners don't say it went bust, they say the last guest checked out 45 years ago and they kept it going. And it was never properly renovated because it was too expensive to put in ensuite bathrooms. And Doc comes with a completely different approach. He says, don't rebuild the whole thing, just repaint it and clean it a little bit, and people, this whole analog coming together. We'll build a recording studio, there'll be painting or something going on. That's what people will want to do on their holidays or on a journey. So that is actually beginning to happen. We were on a trip to check this out last weekend, so there's almost a sequel, and it's very much about continuing the remedy.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you, how satisfying does it feel, or did it feel, when you began this project and seeing where everything was at with Polaroid pictures, and now all these years later seeing that it is something that is now relevant again and people are enjoying it? Does it feel that you to accomplish something really great?
Well, at least the people that I filmed in the film did. And I think that's a really cool question, because yes, it does feel satisfying. And the truth is, when we started out, Doc had saved this last factory that still had Polaroid machines, but it was dead. And he had to bring the people back in and raise some money. And then they got going. And then they realized the actual formula to make Polaroid film didn't exist anymore because the sort of chemicals you needed for it didn't exist anymore. So they had to start from scratch. And their first product was really awful. You know, a Polaroid used to take 2 minutes to process. Their stuff took 45 minutes, and then it would vanish and so on. So we loved the energy and this kind of sheer bloody mindedness of this small group of people getting going again. But my friend Bernd, who was doing the camera, he kept saying, like, this is never going to work. This is so shit.
Oh my gosh.
It was a new team, a young guy who took over, Oscar Smolakowski, kind of with a, you know, not a nostalgic vision, but we want this to be a modern product. And that young team actually made it work. So you buy it in stores all the time now, everywhere now. And yes, it's very satisfying to have been part of that journey. And we always thought, well, you know, if they go under, it'll be valiant and they'll be heroes. They'll, you know, they'll still be proud. I think it's much better that they made it work.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have a new Polaroid, or do you kind of keep your maybe older Polaroid to take pictures in?
Well, the cool thing is there's still hundreds of millions of literally of old Polaroid cameras, and they work just the same as the new ones. I mean, they all work. But I tell you what, the coolest product is something called the Instant Lab. And that's like a Polaroid camera that makes Polaroid of your smartphone photos. And we use that all the time because, of course, I'm also using my smartphone and taking pictures. And you kind of put it on top and out comes a physical Polaroid. That's the one we use the most. It's really wonderful. People love getting it as a present.
I have like a white rectangular looking one, and it makes photos that are kind of that big, and they are stickers. So anytime I take it, I just kind of put it on my like refrigerator and everything. And it's just such a great little thing. But you know, besides doing an impossible project and also filming this new documentary with Doc, do you have any other projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I've actually already finished the next documentary, and that one's kind of really caught up in Corona nirvana at the moment. It's also shot on film, and it's kind of like a Bollywood documentary, but it's British, it's English. It's like Monty Python doing a documentary. I spent a year following the cast and crew and locals around the world's last end of the pier variety show. So this is a Victorian theatre at the end of a North Sea pier above the waves. And every summer and every winter, they put on a big old school variety show. So there's lots of singing and dancing and the drama of putting on a show. But it's all happening in the year that the Brits brought Brexit onto themselves. So it's kind of a documentary tragic comedy with lots of singing and dancing. It's called Seaside Special, and I hope that'll kind of be let out as well sometime soon.
Hopefully everything is kind of on hold and we're all just waiting for things to come out. But have you know, been in Berlin for most of this time, or are you just back in Berlin now with the pandemic?
Well, funnily enough, I have traveled a little bit with my film because there were a few exceptions which I relish, where the film was shown in festivals physically, where Impossible Project was shown physically. And one was, okay, not that exotic in the film festival in Rotterdam. Another screening was in Goa in India. And it was only a few weeks ago before things got really bad there. And that was brilliant. And a few weeks ago also at the Film Museum in Amsterdam called The Eye, which is super futuristic. But they even made their own 35mm print of my film. And I'm very, very proud of that. And it was shown live in the theater, but they'd taken out all the seats and put in 5 little tables with a tulip on it and a drink, and 5 students were allowed, with distance, were allowed to see the film shown in the cinema. So those were my travel experiences, and I'm very grateful for them. But I can't wait to come back to the States.
That sounds wonderful, and I really cannot wait to see An Impossible Project. As soon as I got the email, it looked right up my alley. It's been so wonderful speaking with you, Jens. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and cannot wait for this documentary and your future documentaries as well.
It's very kind of you. Yes, so please help me spread the word for this offbeat little 35mm film, and hopefully we will be sitting in the foyer having a drink after a screening in New York soon.
I would really love that, and I have my fingers crossed. All right. Thank you so much, Jens.
Goodbye.